Last week in Michigan politics, immigration and customs enforcement activity in Minneapolis continuing to spur widespread impacts and calls for change. We go into what kinds of impact it's having on multiple levels of government, including in Michigan. Plus, concerns and allegations over whether non-citizens could possibly be voting in Michigan's elections. What Michigan's Secretary of State says a new investigation has found following a claim from one Michigan county clerk. And could tariffs be playing a role in your food prices? We hear from one expert who also weighed in on controversy over state law surrounding a household staple. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. We begin outside the state in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where activity from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has drawn national and even global attention. Two recent shootings of American citizens by ICE agents have contributed to widespread outcry, and the events have been having major impacts across federal, state, and local governments, including here in our state. We want to explore those in a moment and later in the show. But first, we begin with 13 on Your Side's Callie Lichter reporting from Minnesota earlier this week.
Dozens packed the Minnesota state capitol, rallying for charges against the federal law enforcement agents involved in the shooting deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Through the halls of the Minnesota state capitol were the voices of dozens of people demanding the arrest of the federal law enforcement agents involved in the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. The Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations and Communities United Against Police Brutality say they want Governor Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey to do more after the two shooting deaths.
If you ever wondered what you would have done during the civil rights movement, your actions in Minneapolis and across the state in January 2026 are the reflections of that answer. Absolutely nothing. Do your job! Do your job!
From the basement of the building, the group marched to Governor Walz's door as he met with federal border czar Tom Homan.
No one in America, and especially here in Minnesota, is above the law. No one is immune from murdering innocent people. And we are demanding for the state leadership to do their job.
Diane Raffis lives within walking distance of where Preddy was killed. She's upset with the actions of the federal government.
Very pissed off. People should not get shot for being in the street.
She believes the changes that are happening do not have real impacts.
We need real policy change. We need to abolish ICE. They are doing nothing for our safety. It's just a joke to say it's for our safety. They just, want to control us.
Preddy's death marked the third shooting and the second fatality in Minneapolis involving federal law enforcement agents. In St. Paul, I'm Callie Lichter.
Following the most recent shooting in Minneapolis, both of Michigan's U.S. Senators, Gary Peters and Alyssa Slotkin, say they are voting against a spending package that would provide funding for the Department of Homeland Security. They are joining a number of fellow Democrats, indicating they will vote against the proposal, a stance that increases the chances of a partial government shutdown by the end of the week. 6 of the 12 annual spending bills for the current budget year have been signed into law by President Donald Trump. If senators fail to act by midnight Friday, funding for Homeland Security and all agencies covered under the remaining 6 bills could stop. A congresswoman from Michigan's East Side is pushing back against the Trump administration's immigration crackdown with new legislation. Democratic Representative Haley Stevens recently introduced legislation that would move Department of Homeland Security funding to local law enforcement. Stevens introduced the bill as a partial government shutdown looms if the Senate doesn't pass the appropriations bill that includes funding for DHS. Stevens said one of her concerns with immigration enforcement is the safety of Michiganders.
There's a big conversation taking place right now in the United States Senate, and the House is going to have to respond to it. And frankly, until the goal of safety and security is achieved, I have repeated questions. No one wants to see a shutdown. We know that. But yet, no one wants the chaos that is taking place in Minneapolis to come to their home neighborhood.
Again, if the appropriations bill isn't passed by Friday at midnight, several departments within the government will shut down until funding is approved. Former U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan, Mark Totten, announced he is suspending his campaign to become Michigan's next Attorney General. Totten, who was running as a Democrat, made the announcement on social media Tuesday afternoon, attributing his decision to not having, quote, a viable path forward through an early endorsement convention. Just a day before Totten made the announcement, the United Auto Workers Union endorsed Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald for Michigan's next Attorney General. McDonald and Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savage are the two remaining high-profile candidates vying for the Democratic nomination. Businessman Perry Johnson on Monday announced a gubernatorial bid, the second time he's entered the race for the governor's office. Johnson's campaign said it will focus on efficiency in government, fiscal discipline, and eliminating Michigan's income tax. He said his background in business will lend itself toward eliminating waste in the government. Johnson was among 5 governor candidates who were deemed ineligible for the 2022 August primary ballot after the State Elections Bureau determined they fell short of collecting the necessary number of valid signatures. The Elections Bureau found that candidates submitted fake signatures collected by paid petition circulators. Johnson also ran for president in 2024. With major statewide elections coming up quickly here in Michigan, local clerks are looking for community members to help run our local polling places. We spoke with local clerks earlier this month about what kind of need they may be facing.
Hey, I really enjoyed learning more about local government last year. Are there any more opportunities to get involved this year?
For local election officials, it may be a good thing that was asked.
You could sign up to be an election worker. Election worker? Hey, that sounds cool. What's that all about?
This video being posted to Facebook by Ottawa County earlier this month, encouraging people to learn more about helping to work their local elections. And according to the county clerk, there's a real need behind filling those posts.
These are fundamental roles that we need people to step up and do.
For Ottawa, about 1,200 people work state and federal election cycles, Clerk Roebuck said, at an average of about $15 an hour. But that can depend on each locality.
I still consider it a volunteer opportunity because a lot of times you're taking time away from family or maybe your other job to come and give of your time a few times a year, and it's really a critical role that we could not do without these boots on the ground.
And the need has only grown after Michigan voters put 9 mandatory in-person days of early voting for statewide and federal elections.
Just in Ottawa County alone, we're going to have about 16 total sites for early voting, and those sites have to be staffed 9 days prior to every election, a minimum of 9 days prior to Election Day.
And for others, they may be in need of the help too.
It's going to be a continual effort every cycle to make sure that we have the election workers that we need to cover those 9 days of early voting, to cover all of our absentee counting boards, and to cover our precincts for our voters who come in on Election Day.
Heightened scrutiny of the process, Roebuck said, has brought a positive in terms of people asking questions and seeking an understanding. And getting involved, these clerks signaled, opens a prime opportunity to have questions answered.
Now, what does someone have to do to become an election inspector? Well, election workers can only serve if they've been trained in the last 2 years or have taken the necessary exam. So even if you've done it before, that doesn't necessarily mean you're able to jump back in without new training. We have more on that and other requirements at this story on our website, 13onyourside.com. Concerns and allegations are swirling over whether non-citizens could possibly be voting in Michigan's elections. Coming up, what Michigan's Secretary of State says a new investigation has found following a claim from one Michigan county clerk. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson shared results this week of an investigation conducted by the state's Bureau of Elections, following a claim that non-citizens may have been registered to vote. In a release earlier this month, Macomb County Clerk Anthony Forlini, also running as a Republican for Secretary of State, said that his office had looked into 239 people who were identified as non-citizens during the local jury pool process. Forlini had claimed that it appeared 14 had been registered to vote at some point in time. In her update Thursday morning, Benson said that 3 of the identities they were provided had a voting history. One, she said, was a U.S. citizen and legally cast their ballot. Another, according to her office, was an apparent non-citizen who last cast a ballot in 2018 and had their voter registration canceled in 2022. And the third, the office indicated, had voted in 2024 and was still under review.
Election accuracy, integrity, and security are our primary objective. All these cases of the ones that voted are going to be forwarded to the proper authorities.
But what we've seen consistently is that jury questionnaires are a really bad source of matching to voter files for a variety of reasons. First, it's really hard to take a name from a jury questionnaire and match it to a voter file and be absolutely certain you're talking about the same individual.
I've long said we need to conduct these reviews thoroughly and carefully, and this is why. Because these accusations have real consequences for real people.
Benson said Thursday they had been investigating 15 people. Benson's office told us that Forlini had provided 15 names. We reached out to Forlini's office to confirm that, and if so, ask why the number may be different from the original 14 mentioned. As of this recording, we have not yet heard back. And it was mentioned in that press conference earlier this month that this sample of prospective jurors was from September of last year till just a few weeks ago, and Forlini asserted this was a very small sample. Benson asserted they have worked to clean up over 1 million voter registrations. The former treasurer of the Michigan Democratic Party is now facing charges for allegedly embezzling from a vulnerable adult. Kent County prosecutor Chris Becker confirms Tracy Kornack is charged with 2 counts of embezzlement. Kornack is an attorney who's also served on Attorney General Dana Nessel's transition team after her 2018 election win. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's father and former state official Richard Whitmer has died at the age of 85. In a statement Tuesday morning, the governor announced he had passed the night before, calling him her best friend and most trusted counselor. Richard Whitmer had served as Commerce Secretary under Governor Bill Milliken before becoming the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. The governor says her father encouraged her to pursue a life of public service and that she would not be where she is today without him. The Consumer Price Index shows food prices have continually risen month over month for nearly a decade. We spoke to Dr. David Ortega, a professor at Michigan State University, about the recent continuation of this trend. He says the materials used to make packaging, like aluminum, are being impacted by tariffs. Everyday items like bananas, tomatoes, and coffee are imported from outside the United States, and depending on the country they are coming from, may have higher tariffs. For example, Australia has a 10% tariff, while tariffs for items from Brazil are nearly 5 times as much.
Coffee is heavily imported into the United States from countries like Brazil, which is our primary supplier. And for a period of time there, that coffee was facing a 50% tariff, 50. All of that can really contribute to inflationary pressures. And just because you roll back these tariffs doesn't mean that all of a sudden food prices are going to come down.
The professor we spoke with says it's rare for food prices to drop. When they do, it's short-lived before they reach a freezing point. We also asked Dr. Ortega about a recent lawsuit from the Justice Department against the state of Michigan over cage-free egg law. The lawsuit alleges that Michigan's cage-free egg law is causing prices to rise nationwide and are in violation of the Constitution's Supremacy Clause due to there already being a federal act that regulates egg producers. Dr. Ortega said he disagreed with the DOJ's argument that cage-free egg laws cause prices to raise nationwide.
It's not what I would consider to be a primary driver of egg prices. That would be primarily because of the bird flu. And if you were to go back to 2022, we saw high feed costs because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what that did to commodity prices. The cage-free law here in Michigan is not something that stands out as a primary driver.
Dr. Ortega said that egg prices are currently the lowest they've been in years, and a recent Michigan State study even found that most consumers are willing to pay for the animal welfare benefits provided by the cage-free egg law. A data center proposal from Microsoft led to another packed house at a West Michigan Township board meeting. We were there and have what people living in the township think about the proposal next. As recent events surrounding ICE activity in Minneapolis have sent shockwaves around the country, the conversation around it is also happening in local government. We have details on what Muskegon City Commissioners said at a meeting this past week.
Continued pushback to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, activity in Minneapolis, where the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both shot by federal agents, have fueled widespread outcry. Recent events having vast impacts across the country. Michigan's 2 U.S. senators joining a number of colleagues vowing to vote down a funding bill that would support the Department of Homeland Security. A number of congressional lawmakers also calling for the removal of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. The White House put blame for what led to Preddy's death at the feet of Democratic leaders in the state.
This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota.
Conversations even reaching into local government.
This may not be Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's Muskegon, Michigan, but we are still a border state. ICE does operate in our state, and they could be here in our city next.
Leaders in the city of Muskegon speaking Tuesday during the latest city commission meeting.
Whether you don't care whether you're, rich, poor, black, white, we could be faced with these same type of situations.
These are very uncomfortable times, and it's important to speak in ways that people hear.
Such was brought up after one commissioner said he was told he should not curse in a public forum. He believed it was related to what was said at a public memorial for Renee Good earlier this month.
And I will continue to speak out, and maybe I can do it with more tact so that I don't hurt people's feelings. But I'd rather hurt people's feelings and use the language and use the words that I need to use to get the point across so that American citizens remain safe, so that our law enforcement, our federal law enforcement officers follow the Constitution.
Mayor Ken Johnson reiterating the city's stance that its police are not an immigration enforcement agency and do not arrest or detain based on someone's immigration status.
The Muskegon Police Department does not check immigration status during any interaction with the public. If immigration-related documents are shared with the Michigan Police Department, they will not be shared with other agencies or entities.
Josh Alburtus, 13 on your side.
Also in the Muskegon area, people are raising concerns about problems with the United States Postal Service. Some claiming they haven't received their mail for several days, even weeks. The delays could be causing some to miss out on receiving critical pieces of mail like medications and important documents. 13 on your side's Peter Elliott started looking into the problem after receiving multiple emails from viewers. He spoke with the state lawmaker who experienced the problem himself.
Somebody reached out to me personally that they haven't had mail for 3 weeks. I would say that's unacceptable.
Major issues with the mail in Muskegon.
I'm very concerned about people that rely on the Postal Service not being able to count on them. And
Michigan State Representative Will Snyder says his office started receiving complaints around Thanksgiving.
We have just experienced a pretty massive influx of constituents reaching out to us.
The rancor has only grown over the last 3 weeks.
We've got people that are missing, 50 pieces of mail over the course of a couple of weeks that they haven't received now.
Residents missing out on critical deliveries.
I had somebody reach out that receives medication in the mail. A lot of folks are missing tax documents as it's tax season now.
The issue has affected Snyder personally.
There was 9 service days that I did not receive mail.
On Tuesday, Snyder sent this letter about the issue to the congressional delegation representing Muskegon in Washington.
It's a federal agency, it's not a state agency, so there's limited things that we're able to do. We really wanted to just make sure that they're aware of this problem.
A representative for the Postal Service did not address concerns about mail delivery in Muskegon, but sent a statement focusing on recent weather challenges, writing, in part, quote, USPS would like to remind customers the importance of keeping walkways, sidewalks, and areas around mailboxes clear from snow and ice so letter carriers can provide safe and timely mail delivery.
I think we should give grace to the post office in terms of the weather situation that we've experienced in West Michigan over the last couple of weeks, but those issues are not unique to Muskegon alone.
He says the problems run deeper.
I think that is an issue that is foundational. Those staffing issues have been going on for quite some time, to my knowledge.
Grand Rapids Mayor David LeGrand is providing an update to statements he made during a recent brainstorming session about parking downtown. During the recent GR Mobile meeting, officials discussed ways to encourage more people to park in city ramps. And LeGrand mentioned increasing street parking rates by triple. The mayor says it was just that, a discussion, and there is no proposal on the table. In a statement, LeGrand said, quote, "Impromptu and spontaneous conversations are not unique to public bodies, but they should not be confused with intentional and well-researched policy development." It was another packed house at Lowell Township Board meeting on Monday with people concerned about a proposed data center. The meeting was held at Lowell High School's Performing Arts Center to accommodate the dozens of people who showed up. People were riled up, it seemed, clapping and cheering as members of the community shared their thoughts. We told you about an email from Microsoft to township officials formally introducing itself as the company looking to build a data center at Alden Nash Avenue near I-96. While the data center project was not on the agenda, here's just part of the concerns shared during public comment.
I'm opposed to it for all the reasons, ecological, psychological, the damage that AI has the potential to do, but I'd like to protect the water.
And I don't want you to just take my word alone for what I've shared tonight. I want to go to the audience and say, how many of you all are in favor of having a data center in our community? Okay, how many of you all say no Microsoft? Stand up, raise your hands.
People at the meeting also voiced their frustrations with the board not responding to their concerns in the moment they voiced them. The township attorney explained this is not customary, as that's the community's time to speak. He also gave a brief update on the project as a whole.
A lot of the questions that you asked, this body doesn't have answers yet because it's still early on in the process. The township has asked the applicant, Microsoft, repeatedly for more information. They provided some, but I think both this body and the Planning Commission expect a lot more information before they'll make a final decision.
The next meeting in Lowell Charter Township is a Planning Commission meeting on Monday, February 9th. An update now on the effort to restore the rapids in the Grand River. A group known as Grand Rapids Whitewater first introduced the idea in 2009. The plan calls for removing dams between I-196 and the Fulton Street Bridge, adding boulders to the river, providing easier access for the public, and diversifying fish native to the region. The group, along with the city, announced the federal government has officially determined the proposed project will not have significant impact on the environment. That decision clears the way to finalize funding and choose a firm to do the construction.
July 1 would be the earliest that we would start to go into the river and actually do this work, and then we would be looking at roughly a 2-year construction project in the river itself. Obviously, that's fully dependent on things that the one thing that we can't control in this process, and that's Mother Nature and the water flows.
Once the first phase of the project is done, the group will focus on restoring the Grand River between Ann Street and the 6th Street Dam. As winter weather continues to blanket West Michigan, icy and uncleared sidewalks are raising safety concerns in Grand Haven. The City Council is revisiting a decision made 2 years ago to cut funding for sidewalk snow removal. This decision comes after the heavy snowfall from this past week made it difficult for residents, including seniors, to get around safely. City officials previously cut funding for sidewalk snow removal as a budget adjustment. Council members now say they want staff to prepare a proposal showing what it would cost to bring the service back for the rest of the fiscal year. During a city council meeting earlier this week, multiple council members shared concerns about the risks of uncleared sidewalks.
We have an aging populace here, and it's very difficult for a lot of them to get out there in the snow, and plus it's such a hazard right now. My wife is a good example. She went to the post office today and she had to walk in the street to get there. So, I mean, if we can do what we did before, I don't see no reason why. It's the taxpayers' money that we're spending on it.
That proposal is expected to be presented at the next City Council meeting in early February, where members could then take a formal vote. Mass protests in Iran have led to reports of thousands being killed. Coming up, we speak to an Iranian here in West Michigan about his family in Iran and the protests they're experiencing. Thousands of people are already believed to have been killed after mass protests in Iran. 13 on Your Side's Aaron Sullivan spoke with a local Iranian who shared that these demonstrations, sparked by high prices, are some of the largest some have ever seen.
With tensions rising in Iran, Iranians living in West Michigan are desperate to speak with loved ones overseas.
It's very heart-wrenching, especially being here, to be as far as we are.
I spoke with Nima, who lives here in West Michigan. He did ask me to keep his identity hidden to protect his family members still living in Iran.
Both my parents were born in Iran. They both immigrated here. My dad came here in the late 70s. My mom came here early 90s. Most of my family still lives in Iran. My aunts and uncles, many cousins. My grandma, who's lone surviving grandparent, is also in Iran.
But Nima has had a difficult time reaching out to his loved ones with Iran's media blackout. And with no internet, updates have been limited.
Since then, we've been able to get some messages from our family, and we're very glad and very fortunate that the members of our family are safe.
Nima's family said that these protests mirror what they witnessed back in the 70s during the Iranian Revolution.
It's when we speak to our family in Iran as well, they are echoing the same, that this is not like anything that they have ever seen.
Protesters are calling for an end to Iran's theocracy, and many hope to restore the country's pre-revolution government. Human rights groups have reported the death toll from January's protest against the Islamic regime has risen to over 30,000. Nima says with this blackout, reports of mass executions and violence against protesters have been shared through social media every few days.
We're hearing about psychological tactics to really crush the soul of the Iranian people in these protests as well, whether it's forcing people to dig through body bags to find their loved ones, forcing them to pay for their bodies back.
The country says they've paused executions, but thousands of arrests are still under investigation by human rights groups.
Although there's a message and belief that the killing is stopped and executions have stopped, the messages we're getting are that that's not the case. And I urge people to contact their legislators, contact their congressmen and senators to ask for support for Iran.
Aaron Sullivan, 13 on Your Side.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com.